Hello viewers, welcome to Everything Sociology 24. And as I've said in my previous video on the introduction to anthropology, today we're going to discuss extensively on the origin of anthropology. So get yourself ready because this video is going to be a tad bit long. And before we do that, please, I want to implore us to like, to share, to comment, and most importantly, to also subscribe to this channel, because when you do that, it's going to encourage me to do more and better. Thank you. The origin of anthropology can be traced to two perspectives, but I'm going to add a third one. Now, the first perspective is the biblical perspective, right? And then the second perspective is the historical perspective. And the third perspective is the colonialist or imperialist perspective. Now, first, anthropology, it was viewed as a pastime, for instance, of travelers and explorers such as Christopher Columbus, right? And then secondly, it was conceived as an important discipline and as a means of understanding different culture. So remember when we said one of the unique characteristics of anthropology is the comparative characteristics itself, where you get to compare different cultures. Now, for instance, when we took or gave an example of Christopher Columbus, he actually discovered the Americas. He was an explorer. He was a traveler. The age of discoveries by travelers and explorers was marked by adventures and voyages. Now, from the biblical standpoint, in our Bible, I'm going to pick a Bible right now, right? When we open our Bible to the book of Genesis, for instance, it can be traced to the story of Adam. Now, Adam was created in the likeness of God, in the image of God, and from the dust of the sand. Now, he had dominion, and then he also interacted with other animals. We've heard of the Garden of Eden. Now, God only interacted with man on an interpersonal basis, like a family. Right? They had a one-on-one interaction in the Garden of Eden. Now, other creatures were subordinate to man or inferior to man because man was a higher being. He controlled or had dominion over all and sundry. Adam also gave names to some of these animals, the wild beasts, the birds of the air. And another thing to take note of is he was saddled with the responsibility of occupying and grooming the Garden of Eden. He was instructed to eat the fruits of every other tree except a particular tree. So over time, God saw the need to create a companion or helper for Adam in the person of Eve. When you open our Bible to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, we can see that God actually caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep, a trance, right? And then he took out a rib and created Eve to function as a helper, a helpmate, a companion to him. So from this illustration, it is clear that the origin of anthropology can be traced to the Garden of Eden through the following indices. Now, one, man had dominion over other animals, all and sundry. He was seen as a higher being, a higher animal, if you want to put it that way. Now, the second thing is there was order and procreation in the Garden of Eden. The thing about this is when we talk about procreation, is about bringing forth offsprings, right? Or being fruitful. So God actually instructed man, Adam, to be fruitful. Now, man lived, as a third one, man lived to fulfill his economic, his political, his religious, and psychological need with God in control. Now, this area of anthropology has been broadly neglected by scholars alike, and it is majorly centered on the biblical writing. Now, that is to say, anthropology existed from the time man started to occupy the earth. That was when anthropology started existing. From the very moment Adam and Eve, they started occupying the earth, the biblical perspective. Another aspect that contributed to the beginning of the study of anthropology can be traced to the series of writings, of folklores, of stories, of jottings by philosophers and travelers who went about studying different cultures as a result of their exploration, right? But as a result of the inconsistency in dates and etc., we can't readily trace the founding father or actually dissected or pinpointed to a particular individual. So anthropology thus became a science based on history because it involves the collation of data from early travelers or explorers, as I've said. Now, anthropology in this regard can be traced to the ancient world, when travelers, when philosophers, they speculated and observed the physical and cultural differences or characteristics, for instance, the facial similarities of different races. Now, the limitation in technology also was an impediment When you compare, the advancement in technology now as against yesteryears, there's a huge difference. The biblical story thus explains that nobody discovered anyone, since the world has been populated before the age of discovery and even exploration itself. Now, these early discoveries can be traced to writings of popular philosophers. Now, three Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, even Vico, who was a Confucian of the Chinese extraction, and then Ibn Khaldun, Montaigne, Fati Bernardo de Sagagon, who wrote about the Aztec Empire, and Garcilaso de la Vega, who wrote about the Incan Empire, all in Latin America. The origin of anthropology can also be traced to other perspectives, such as the European perspective and that of the Asian or Arabic perspective. Now, the Europeans actually believe that the founding father of anthropology is Herodotus. Now, Herodotus was a Greek philosopher, as I said, and an historian. He traveled extensively and asked in-depth questions. He described the physical characteristics of the Persians. He studied their language, he studied their institution, he studied their custom, political organizations, their law, and even their military acumen or strength at that point in time. For the Asians and Arab, they accept the teachings of Ibn Khaldun. Now, in his book Al-Maqadima, if we actually read further, the Prolegomena, he dwelled on the lifestyles of the nomad itself, and then the nomadic and the sedentary lifestyle. He compared them side by side. So therefore, he compared side by side the culture of prosperity and scarcity. Now, prosperity, according to him, led to leisure and insecurity, while scarcity itself increased security, awareness, and bravery. The sedentary society encourages skills and craft, while the nomadic society itself of the Arab was deficient in craft. So according to Ibn Khaldun, he said the townsmen living a sedentary lifestyle are more brighter and they are more intelligent as compared to those that are the nomads themselves. That even sometimes the nomads, they will feel that, okay, they are inferior and then they belong to, a inferior part of humanity, and then those in the sedentary lifestyle, they are more superior to them. So however, the difference lies in the advancement of craft and science, in which those that actually practice the sedentary lifestyle, they actually imbibe or incorporate into their own culture. These two philosophers, that is Herodotus and Ibn Khaldun, their perspective can be said to be both historical and comparative, because they strive to know the marked differences and similarities between cultures. And as I've said, that's one of the unique characteristics of anthropology, because it enables or allows us to infer the uniqueness in a particular culture. What are those distinctive characteristics that separates them from others? The third perspective, in which I feel most persons don't readily talk about, is the imperialism and colonialist viewpoint of the origin of anthropology. Since the first two we've mentioned are the biblical, the historical, now is the third one. Now, the rise of imperialism and colonialism marks the beginning of anthropology as a teaching and learning and administrative and policy-making discipline. The Europeans, they changed the subject matter of anthropology, which is the science of humanity. They changed it to being the study of a primitive, a backward, a savage culture. That is a culture that is inferior and below theirs. And these terms in which I've used, the primitive, the backwards, the savage, and etc., they were quite insultive. They were quite derogatory in nature. Individuals from other cultures, they were labeled as being backwards, right, or being weird, or being quirky. And these societies, they also were small-scaled, and then they lacked, advanced technology. Their own technology was quite antiquated or obsolete in nature. And then they operated heavily on oral traditions and not written traditions as compared to that of the Europeans, so to say. So stories were actually passed through words of the mouth, which is an oral form, as compared to the written form that was documented in case of any future reference. The European societies actually served as a mirror view to that of Africa. We've read about the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 85, and then the scramble of Africa by different European countries such as Britain, the France, the Germany, and even before that, the Portuguese too. They came to Africa, they were exploring and searching for different territories, right? Looking out for cheap labors to enable them build their own economy. And then they viewed Africans as black monkeys. Quite a derogatory term, so to say. It's really sad. I am an African and a Nigerian in extension. One thing we need to note right here is when the British came at that point in time exploring different territories, they saw that the indirect role of policy was quite functional in other societies or other countries in which they colonized before coming. For instance, in Latin America, and even the establishment of a trading pact with East Indian Company. And they also sought about bringing that idea down to Nigeria, where they established pacts and agreement with the local chiefs, for instance, and also consuls, companies, for instance, the UAC, United African Company, and etc. So this itself, if you go to the French colonies, which were colonized by France, they established the policy of assimilation, which was abolished at a certain point in time because it wasn't functional. So that and everything that's related to it saw the emergence of social anthropology. Social anthropology is concerned with the study of the social institution and social structure of colonized African territories. Thank you for watching. This is where we draw the curtain on the origin of anthropology. So please endeavor to drop your comment down there and also to like, to share, and most importantly, to subscribe to this channel so you facilitate and enable me to bring more educative and interesting content to you. Once again, my name is Ode Agbaka Godwin. Be blessed, be studious, and also remember to also continue exploring new things. And don't forget, prior proper preparation prevents poor performance.